Hey, Cup family, how are you guys? How are we doing?
Guys,
Good to see you guys again that we don't see, right? Today we're going to do a video on science. It is the plant life cycle 3.10C. The objective, I can investigate and compare how animals and plants undergo a series of orderly changes in their diverse life cycles, such as tomato plants, frogs, and ladybugs. The life cycle, it's a sequential stages of growth and development that an organism goes through in its lifetime. The germination is the period in a plant's life cycle when a seed begins to grow after a period of dormancy. Here is the thought question for you to think about while you're looking through these slides or watching these slides. In what ways are the life cycles of plants different?
Okay, so here is a picture of the life cycle of plants. Okay, so when your plant first starts, it's a seed. Okay, and the seed should be in the ground, and then it's going to germinate. And when it germinates, that's when it starts to root and grow. Okay, so it's growing at this point. After that, it's either going to have leaves, or it might have a cone if it's like a tree. So one of the things that they were talking about in the beginning was a tomato plant. A tomato plant has leaves. So it's one of those that's going to germinate with leaves or some type of flower, okay? After it germinates, it's going to pollinate. And when it pollinates, that is where an animal or an insect or maybe even wind happens to get in contact with that flower or the seed, and not seed, I'm sorry, the flower or the cone, and makes it move into the soil. Okay, after that happens, it fertilizes and grows into a new plant. There's many different types of plants, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
How do plants germinate? Well, they have to have the right temperature. They have to have the right amount of water and the right amount of air circulation.
So what Miss Espino just said is it has to have the right amount of temperature, which means if it's a plant, it's not going to grow in the winter. Okay, you're not going to have a sunflower grow in the winter time because it has to have the right temperature. Okay, it has to have the right amount of water. A lot of plants need different types of water. A cactus plant doesn't need as much water as that sunflower might. And then it's going to need the right amount of air circulation, which means you're not going to have a plant that's going to grow inside your pantry. Okay, you're going to have sunlight and air circulation and water and all sorts of stuff in order for it to grow correctly.
how do plants pollinate? Okay. Some plants produce flowers. Those flowers have pollen in them. If you see the little tubes on the end of this red flower, that's where bees and hummingbirds like to dip their tails for the bees, and then the hummingbirds stick their beak in there and they pull out honeysuckle or the juice of the flower. Okay, that's how they feed, but that's also how they pollinate other flowers because it gets all over their beak. They'll go to another flower and then they'll put that pollen on the flower and take over out. So like it says here, pollen is tiny grains that help fertilize the plant through wind, insects, or animals. When the wind blows, you've ever taken a dandelion and blew on it and it blows up and floats through the air, okay? And it takes a little while for it to land. Some of that's all pollen. So some of that will travel for miles and miles and land somewhere, and then in that spot will pollinate, and it'll start a seed, and then it'll start germinating, and then it'll start growing. So some use flowers, just like this. Okay. Others, like trees, trees don't produce the same way. They can have cones. Okay, so like pine cones. Okay, everybody likes to play with pine cones, especially kids. Believe it or not, even my girls now still like to collect pine cones. Just look at them. Okay, these pollinate kind of in the same way. They fall from the trees, and then pollen breaks off of the pine cones or breaks out of the pine cone and travels again for miles and miles, and then lands on the ground, and that's how trees grow. Okay, so they pollinate through wind, insects, or animals. They both pollinate the same way, but trees usually don't produce flowers, and flowers usually don't produce pine cones.
The thought question, in what ways are the life cycles of a plant different?
Okay, well, in all honesty, the life cycles of a plant are the same. The only difference is how they reproduce, okay? So they're all gonna go through the seed stage, they're gonna go through germination, they're gonna go through pollination, they're gonna go through the same stages. The only difference is how they reproduce, okay? And when they reproduce, like Mr. Garcia said, it's either a cone or it's a flower. So.
And they're not interchangeable.
All right, so hopefully that'll help you guys with your science homework this week. We really miss you and can't wait to see you guys shortly.
Questions, give us a call, email, Zoom with us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're always here for you guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.